Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this roundtable discussion on a very critical topic, which is around, how to ensure, data protection for a cyber resilient enterprise, and more specifically, we are talking here for in terms of the ransomware attacks, which have become rampant, and how do we ensure cyber resilient data protection strategies in case of a ransomware attack. Let me just start with with a brief kind of context setting where I want to just talk a little bit about how the ransomware attacks have evolved. And what has happened is, as the data volumes have grown within the organizations, the exposure to ransomware attacks has obviously increased, and that the data is what the ransomware attacks actually exploit. They exploit the business's growing dependence on data, because they know that today a business cannot survive, a business cannot run a function even for an hour, or rather for a minute, without data. And this is what the ransomware attacks exploit. Now, according to a recent report, the attacks have grown at almost 1,000% growth year over year. And estimates suggest that 2/3 of organizations have been the target of at least one ransomware attack. So today it's not a question of if I will if I will ever become a victim of ransomware attack. It is actually when an organization will fall victim to a ransomware attack. And it is not only widespread, but the frequency is also accelerating. And that's why we are seeing more and more organizations falling prey to these ransomware attacks. And of course, the creativity, the sophistication of these attacks being launched by the cyber criminals is again improving, and it's increasing. Now, considering this, it should come as no surprise that senior executives at many organizations are concerned about the technical as well as business risks that go hand in hand with these ransomware attacks. And the top concern of organizations regarding a ransomware attack was the risk of losing data, with the loss of productivity and the interruption of operations following closely behind. And of the organizations that paid the ransom, not all got their data back. So not only has the average amount of ransom demand increased, the majority of businesses paying the ransom also fail to get the data back. So ransomware can be hugely damaging to business, because we know that, like I mentioned, each hour lost, or rather every minute of lost access to data, can mean millions of dollars in losses as well as damage to brand reputation. So the ability to recover the data and the speed of recovery is therefore the key to cyber resilience. And it's time that businesses rethink their data protection strategy around response and data recovery plans that can quickly bring information back online. So not only is a time and speed in recovering data from a ransomware attack critical, but also ensuring integrity, confidentiality, and availability of this data. So all this needs to be a part of the data protection strategy. So in today's discussion, what I really want to bring to the fore is that while organizations are putting in efforts in preventing ransomware attacks, and definitely that is something which is critical, but organizations also need to start looking at how do they actually recover their data, how do they protect their data in the event of a ransomware attack, considering that the event of their falling prey to a ransomware attack is almost inevitable. So with that, let me first introduce all of you to each other, the panelists, and then we will start with the discussion. So please welcome Mr. Nitin Mukhija, Chief Digital and Data Officer, Edelweiss Tokyo Life Insurance, Mr. Sushil Nahar, GM Infrastructure and Security at Happiest Minds, Mr. Kiran Rane, Chief Information Security Officer and Chief Vigilance Officer, Abhyudaya Bank, and Mr. Debasish, Bhattacharjee, Speciality Channels Leader, Data Protection Solution, APJ for Dell Technologies. So welcome, gentlemen, a formal welcome to all of you.
Thank you so much.
So,
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here with all of you.
Great. So let's get the discussion started. Now, my very first question is actually for the CISOs and the CIO and the CISOs here in the discussion. Maybe Nitin, we can start with you. Do you have a strategy and tools and technologies in place that ensure that your organization is prepared for recovering from a ransomware attack? And what are the key pillars of your strategy? So we already are assuming that you have put in place technologies for preventing ransomware attacks. But in the event of a ransomware attack, are you well prepared with tools and technologies as well as strategy for recovering from the ransomware attack, for recovering the data and data protection?
It actually requires a very long answer, okay, but I'll try to still summarize it and maybe we can go in detail about the parts of it.
Sure.
Okay. So if you look at it, ransomware is not something which you will do post-fact, like incident management after a ransomware attack has happened. It's not something which you will wake up post-facto and then think about now what to do. It actually requires a well-rehearsed defense, already planned, and at each level of the organization that what each person will do in case such an attack happens. So preparation phase and awareness is very, very critical. So what we have done at Edelweiss Tokio is we are actually following the NIST framework for the same, which actually covers the 4 key pieces: the preparation phase, the detection and analysis, then how do we go about if it happens, contain, eradicate, and recover, and plus the post-incident activity. Let me focus more on the preparation because that's where the strategic choices have been made. In terms of what are the key things which can actually go about, okay, or go wrong, okay, to actually make the ransomware attack happen. So one is, okay, possibly some user not being aware, they open up a email attachment which right from some internet source and which actually corrupts the files on the system, okay. Or it could be some browser-based attack where some system or the end user device was not properly protected, not properly patched, or let's say a server which was running with certain vulnerable application, or maybe the patch management was not proper on the server, or it could be some malicious macros running on the some Office Excel file, something like that. It could also be not using, let's say, MFA for key critical administrative servers or keeping the default passwords. So all those things contribute to it. So it's very important that user awareness happens at each role of the organization, depending upon, okay, what is the criticality of data which they handle. So that is first and foremost important, where we lay a lot of stress on the user awareness, because those are the first line of defense for you. Because these people are the ones who will tell you our response strategy, because as you said, time is very, very critical. If some users informs very late, maybe after 10 days, while the files are already encrypted on the file server or the local device, maybe the ransomware malware has already spread to multiple other servers. So the early detection is very, very critical. So apart from user training, we also focus on many like solutions, let's say some EDR solutions, or many of the it's actually a multi-layered approach where we take there's no single tool which can actually protect, say that, okay, I can protect you from the ransomware. So we have adopted a multi-layer approach for the end user devices, for the servers, for our email server. How do we protect our network layer? How do we do authentication, identity and security management? How do we manage our backups on the storage? And how do we protect our proprietary data? So all those things require different solutions in place, which we have incorporated as per the NIST framework to safeguard ourselves.
Nitin, I want to particularly focus a little bit more on the post-attack data recovery and data protection. You mentioned about backups. So, what strategy do you have in place to ensure the data protection in case of a ransomware attack?
So actually the backups, as I said, the backups, it's not that you take a backup and keep the backup on the local copy. You have to keep your backups on some offline storage, because these ransomware will typically spread laterally. So they'll infect the system and then they'll transfer them laterally to other network storage using that user permissions. So if the user has access to the backup storage as well, they will actually corrupt the backup as well, or they will delete the backups as well. So it's very important that how do you keep your backups in an offline storage, okay, away from other network connections, or let's say maintain the backups in some read-only storage, or keep it some gap between the main servers and the backup, and also continuously have an automation around recovering from those backups. Because let's say the file server, let's say, takes a 1 month to get encrypted by the ransomware, but you will come to know about it after 1 month. But maybe between that 1 month, all the encrypted files were also getting backed up, so your backup is also getting corrupted. So how do you early detect those things, that okay, something is getting wrong, through various tools, through let's say SEIM tools, seeing that okay, there's a high file logging activity happening somewhere, through some EDR solutions. We have even used Microsoft tools for the same, to detect, give us a warning signal that something wrong is happening. And then plus the backups which are happening. So how do you know that okay, which backup is the right one, which contains the actual files which are not corrupted? And then how do you restore from the backups? So that automation of taking the backups regularly, plus recovering from those backups, is very, very critical. So your strategy has to be based upon that, how frequently you are doing the backups, how clean are your backups, and how fast you can recover from those backups. And plus, how do you safeguard your backups from getting corrupted by keeping them on an isolated offline storage? So that is important.
Great, thanks. Thank you so much, Nitin, for your initial thoughts. So Sushil, as part of your data protection strategies, of course, companies now have strategies built around preventing ransomware attacks. But how critical is, or rather, in your case, how critical is the post-attack? How well prepared are you for a post-attack scenario in terms of recovering data, in terms of ensuring that that your data is protected, the integrity, the availability of the data? How well have you thought of that in your data protection strategy?
As Nitin rightly mentioned, prevention is better than cure. Because once ransomware attack happens, you would lose a lot of time in terms of recovering back your old data. So that's why your defense has to be strong. You have to work on people, process, technology area. But in case scenario, let's consider that you are impacted with ransomware attack, then you should depend on your golden image. You have to ensure that you have backup of all your critical applications and your devices, which are super crucial for your business to run. So those golden images, which are clean images, you should be able to use those golden images, and that's what we do. So we have all our critical business application, their golden images are securely protected. And Nitin rightly mentioned that you can have your backup online, real-time online, but you should have some offline backup as well. Because if your online image is also corrupted, then you should be depending on your offline backup, and that is the best strategy. I agree with him. Second thing, what we have done, that we implemented encryption at various levels, at a user desktop, laptop level, endpoint device level, as well as on our server. So definitely that is super critical for business. So apart from that, now a lot of organizations are going on cloud. They are leveraging cloud. That's a good thing. But you have to ensure that beyond a point, those cloud service provider will not be responsible for your data. So not only on-premise, but you have to ensure that on cloud also, you have to secure that data, protect that data, and keep testing the recoverability of that data time to time. So we conduct mock drills on periodic basis to ensure that yes, whatever backup has been taken, that can be restored, and we can come back to normal within service level agreement what each business unit has, that within this time frame, this particular application has to come back to normal. So that strategy we have adopted.
Thank you so much, Sushil, for those thoughts. Kiran, so I definitely what Nitin and Sushil, stressed on the prevention. I'm definitely an advocate of prevention being better than cure. But here we are talking of a scenario where, like I mentioned, it's no longer a case of if we will fall victim to a ransomware attack, but when we will fall victim to a ransomware attack. And it's like today, the situation is such that the inevitability of an organization falling to a ransomware attack is very high. So in case of that scenario, how critical is it for you to be well prepared in advance, or to have your data protection strategy incorporating a plan for speedy recovery of data, availability of data, and to have the integrity of your data maintained? So have you incorporated that into your data protection strategy?
Yes, yes. You have rightly said. Nowadays, it is commonly said in IT that there are only two types of organizations. Once those are hacked, and once those don't know that they are hacked. So it is possible, it is very likely that attacks will be there. So you need to be prepared for that. Okay. Nitin, I think, covered a lot of things. In simple terms, if I say, we need to have all our softwares up to date to as a prevention strategy, and perform threat analysis with our security team. And training of staff is very critical, because it is said that either there is a weak point or weak end user. So training the end user is very important, because having technology is very important, but at the same time, your staff should be aware how to use it, and not to fall prey for those attacks. Okay. So yes, and one more thing for bank, it is custodian. We are custodians of data. Our data, it is not our data. So now European countries GDPR is already implemented, and they involve huge penalties. So here also that bill is under progress at Parliament level. So once that is implemented, we are definitely going to have sleepless nights, because protecting someone else's data is more critical than protecting your own data. So that is also, and as rightly mentioned by Nitin, that master rule of 3-2-1, that is 3 copies of your data, then on 2 media, and 1 offsite backup. That 3-2-1 golden rule is there to prevent ransomware attack. So that is very important nowadays. And reputation is also affected. So you should have that BCP also in your hand, so that actions can be taken immediately, because reputation also gets hampered in these attacks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your views. So Debashish, you heard from all three technology leaders in terms of, so one is that, of course, the propagating of the 3-2-1 golden rule. So one is that. However, what we have seen is that most organizations are focused on strategies and tools for preventing ransomware attacks. And like I mentioned, no doubt that is important. We see very few actually planning in advance for a post-ransomware attack scenario. And here we have three organizations who have put in place, the backup and the recovery strategies to prevent, to ensure the data recovery. So one is that, why do you think this is so that, why this is so critical for businesses to plan and prepare for such a scenario in advance?
Okay, so I think I agree with all the gentlemen, Kiran, Sushil, and Nitin, on their thoughts. So Nitin really touched upon that right point on one, the offline backup, which is important, because that's where the connectivity over the network is discontinued. So you keep a copy intact. And he mentioned about the NIST framework, which is the key framework that all organizations generally tend to follow. And if you look at the NIST framework, again, there are 5 pillars under the NIST framework. So
If you look at one is the identity, identifying, the detection, the protection, the response, and the recovery. Now, if you look at the various points where the intrusion can happen, is only those points which connects to the internet world or to the external world, which is typically the endpoints as and therefore the awareness and everything at the endpoint becomes so critical, because you click on a wrong file and you can, compromise the entire organization. So that's where the endpoint part comes. Similarly, I think the network point as well as the application level interface, those kind of security becomes very important when it comes to prevention. And that's what, if you look at out of the 5, the 4 pillars are towards the prevention methodology within the framework as well. But you know what, if you don't do the 5th pillar, then the 4 pillars don't stand up, so the infrastructure will stand only when the 5 pillars are in place. Now that's where the recovery becomes so important. And as I think Sushil mentioned and Nitin mentioned about keeping data offline. Now, essentially, if you look at it, the medium on which the data is kept can be various media, right? So therefore, the choice of the media becomes important. Secondly, I think what happens is why this comes at an afterthought for many customers when I talk to them is, and I don't blame them rather, actually, because at the end of the day, they are in a situation which is a very tough situation. They have $1 to spend, let's say, as a budget in the whole year, and that $1 has to be sliced into so many cents. The application, the business will drive the applications, so they will be pressured on getting the applications. The applications will drive the infrastructure will drive the security, and by the time all this comes in place, the data protection and the things come little later on. So even the data protection, I've seen sometimes the customers living with whatever they have till the very level they can, and since most of the customers are spending onto the the prevention methodologies, so therefore in a way they feel confident that since I have this in place, so the chances that I will be hacked by an attacker will be less. And probably that is the reason that the spends on this area has been less, specifically when it comes to the recovery methodology, because that's the most key important part if you look at the entire game. Because at the end of the day, whatever the business or whatever the investments that the company does is all about creating data. The applications are not just doing anything. They're at the end of the day creating data which drives the business. So therefore, the criticality is to manage the data, secure the data, protect that data, and make it available when there is an eventuality. And what I have also seen is that many customers feel that since I have a disaster recovery plan in place, and therefore I would be able to recover if such eventuality happens. And I think that's where we go and tell them that disaster recovery and cyber recovery are 2 different things. If you look at the RTO, RPO, the reasons for the failure, all completely different. Okay, so therefore, I think I strongly think that it is important when the budgeting exercise is being done, a part of that budget should be fixed, for the cyber recovery part, even if it is under the security, because the recovery will be a component which will be common or which will interlink between the data management side of the infrastructure and data security side of the spend. So, so that's where if that can be done with, then I think every year this will be more streamlined, and it will be, at the end of the day, the CIOs will be able to have a highly confident situation that when such things happen, their data will be recovered, and it will be recovered very fast.
So Nitin, so first of all, I want to get your view on in terms of what Debasish mentioned about investment going into the different buckets, and of course there is a limited pool that you have, and you have to wisely use it. And I know that's a very tough task, but do you think that there is a proportionately more focus on on the prevention in terms of allocating the budgets than on recovering. And post that, if you can also talk about some of the challenges that you face when it comes to responding and recovering to data post a ransomware attack. What do you see as some of the challenges in case of a data recovery required post ransomware attack?
Sure, Shipra. So I think Debashish raised a very, very valid point. Data is the crux of what each business is doing right now. Application, nothing but like this application can't do much. Okay, ultimately you have to protect your data. Now, what is happening now, especially in this pandemic, where a lot of people are working from home? This is one of the challenges because earlier people used to come to office, right? And people used to get connected on the office LAN network, and all the devices used to get patched at the same time. There was no issues at all. Now people are operating at the different remote locations with the different constraint of the network connectivity and other things. How do you keep the various devices patched, right? So obviously you need some more advanced things, tools to be available so that you at the central location manage, monitor, okay, the patch management status of various devices. That is one. Secondly, for the budget piece, what happens that it's no longer a budgeting exercise. For example, he was mentioning, okay, that during the budgeting exercise, and right now we are into the budgeting exercise for the coming year right now. But for cyber security piece, what I'm always been working with my management team here is that we have to be very agile and volatile in terms of this thing. For example, I would say last 1 year, there are multiple times where I've gone back to my corporate planning team, asking them, okay, this is a high risk which we see, and we should increase our investment or put more budgets into this space, right? It can't be a one exercise which you do at the beginning of the year that, okay, this is my budget for the cybersecurity and just to run the year, because it's a very volatile thing. We have been continuously scanning and re-scanning and re-auditing each and every system, because that is not only required by the IRD as our regulator, but also given the high increase of ransomware and other attacks which we are seeing. So we are proactively monitoring our security posture, because that's what we are even required to submit to our stakeholders, our board, that what is our security posture as to stay compliant and ensure that, okay, we run the business in a secure manner. So as and when we see that, okay, there is something which we see potential area of improvement, to incorporate and include a tool, because given the new way of working, people working remotely, and we need to manage certain things in a most efficient way. So we actually, the new investments are happening throughout the year as we see. It's a growing, evolving thing, not something which, and this year also when I'm doing my budgeting, I'm actually again reiterating that I can come back to my corporate planning team again for some more budget if I see some things changing in the external environment. So you have to be, because the threat vector is not constant, they're also advancing. You see, for example, browser vulnerabilities, right? They work on the zero-day attacks. Today a vulnerability has been found, so the attackers will come and exploit the zero-day attack. Maybe my current antivirus solution, my current EDR solution are not suitable for that. I may have to keep one kind of antivirus solution for my end user devices, one kind of solution for my server devices, one kind of solution for my email devices, because my email is the most vulnerable, because that's where they are connected most to the internet. So if I have to continuously run my, let's say, some machine learning logic to do my advanced email filtering, so those are very, very important. And how do I keep enhancing those solutions and keep improving my policies? So just to summarize what the Michelle said, so it's very important. The preparation and planning phase is the most important piece right now, because so touchwood, right now we're not faced any ransomware attack right now. Okay, to say that, okay, fine, ransomware happened and then this was the budget we allocated and we utilize that budget for the recovery piece. But we do invest a lot in how we will manage the recovery phase in case something happens, like how we will store the backups, how the backups will be recovered, how the backup process has to be automated. We have actually thought through and invested in solutions for the same. However, the volatile thing, budget has been more for the continuously increasing our security posture and incorporating better tools to safeguard ourselves.
Thank you so much. Sushil, if I were to ask you, how confident, or let's say, are you 100% confident when it comes to, the 100% data recoverability, and in terms of the timelines for recovery post a ransomware incident? So, what kind of timelines, do you kind of see, and are you 100% data recoverability? Do you have assurance around that? If a ransomware attack were to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I will go back to our school of ISO 27001, where it talks about labeling of information. That is one of the control. Right?
Yeah.
All my CISOs over here, CISOs will agree.
Right.
In many organizations, they have not classified their data. We all agree that data is engine and it is a new fuel for organization. It has to be protected, but you cannot provide same level of security to all the data. So first of all,
Yes.
you should classify the data. You should understand what is super critical for my business and what kind of strategy I should have to protect that data. However, as you ask, do we have strategy within the organizations? Yes, within my organizations, we have implemented um, strategy in terms of recovering that data. We have given disk space where all end user also can store entire information, and it is done automatically. So there is a data sync which happens, and on your cloud drive or OneDrive or Google Drive or your iCloud. Okay, so whatever is feasible for your organization, please keep copying all users' data, at least your managers and above, their data is very, very important and crucial for the organization. Server data is always, backup is always taken because that is under IT organization, and administrators are well trained, well grown, they know their responsibilities. We all agree that awareness is extremely important, training is important. People should be aware of their roles and responsibilities, so they are aware that how frequently, how to take a backup of their servers and keep that data protected. So yes, to large extent, we are pretty confident in terms of restoring from that data. In fact, I would say instead of becoming a ransomware house, we are data warehouse where our data is protected, and we are confident that we can recover from any such attack. So there is no need to pay ransom to anyone. That is the policy we have adopted, that we will not pay any single penny to anyone, because from ransomware, not everybody is at loss. There are few people who are making, who are beneficiaries. Your hackers are beneficiaries. Your cryptocurrency organizations are beneficiaries because their share price are going up. People who are invested in cryptocurrency, they are beneficiaries there because their share price is going up. And finally, regulators are also beneficiaries because there are penalties, as Nitin also mentioned, that you have to comply with regulations. And if you are victim of that, forget about your loss. The regulators will charge you penalties and they will be benefited. So don't do all that. And that's why I will come to my first point. Prevention is better than cure.
So, what kind of timelines have you incorporated in your strategy, that this is a timeline that you target to recover, or you must have worked out that as part of your SLAs, etc.
Yes. So most of our business critical application, we have 4 hours of recoverability. There is a 24/7 security operation center which is running, and all business applications can be recovered within 4 hours. Your desktop laptops can be recovered within 2 working days. So that kind of SLA we have taken.
So Kiran, almost the same question to you.
Yeah.
How confident are you in terms of data recoverability, the data availability, and the integrity of the data in case of such an event? And what kind of challenges do you see around that?
Yeah. Uh, Data recoverability, I told you that we also follow that 3-2-1 rule. So definitely we do have the backup to restore our data, and we do restoration also to check the data whether backup taken is whether it is restorable. So that thing also being done. So definitely we are confident about it. But as rightly said by one of the panelists, that data classification is a problem because see, it takes culture. Means classifying the data means confidential data, sensitive data. That culture needs to be incorporated throughout the organization in all the employees. So it takes time. We are maturing to that. So once that is achieved, then you can be doubly sure to check to take control of your most sensitive data, like PII information for our customers, so that we can protect more. Those encryptions we can use high encryption for that, like that.
Okay.
So yes, we are confident that we can recover the data, but prevention is always better than cure. So definitely we spend more time on prevention rather than recovery.
Also, time is very critical. So again, in terms of timelines, do you
Yes,
have certain timelines worked out that
yes.
the
Timeline is there. Definitely RTO all are there. They
so
are there.
what is the maximum or rather how fast are you confident in terms of the timelines in terms of recovery?
So it is in our policy, and I don't want to share that, but it is there in our policy. And according to policy, we have checked also. It is working.
Debashish, I think one
Okay.
thing that keeps coming up again and again, during this discussion, not just during this discussion, but I think that would be true for any other IT leader, security leader, which would be that, of course, we are focusing on prevention and more on prevention and less on let's try to prevent it. Let's let the thing not happen so that I don't have to get into the challenges anymore. But what what we are seeing is that they organizations have to be prepared, and they can't be prepared once the attack has already happened. So that has to happen in advance, and that means working out the time and speed of recovery post a ransomware attack. In your opinion, one is, how critical is time and speed in recovering the data post a ransomware attack, and how can organizations really speed up recovery post an attack, even while ensuring that there is no data loss and the integrity and confidentiality of data is maintained?
Well, so no doubt about it that the time to recover is the essence, because if you delay, you are out of business, right? Or you are incurring loss. Every day you are not in business is losing out on the revenue of that particular day at the least. Besides, of course, the other brand reputation and other stuff that goes behind. And the market capitalization because of the confidence of the stakeholders getting lost and so on and so on. So therefore, the time to recover is essence. But yes, the time may not be as quick as I mean, I think Sushil has a very advanced thing of 4 hours, but typically those are more in the business continuity kind of a scenario. People keep that kind of a recovery time objective and recovery point objective. But in the cyber recovery, generally we have seen that customers are generally okay even if it is up to 24 hours. But beyond 24 hours, it becomes difficult, because then there is a severe, hit onto the business losses. And that's the reason one of the, while everybody has talked about the offline backup, and what I continue to see in the marketplace is that the offline backup in the 3-2-1 framework still continues to be the tape most of the time. Now, when it is tape, the tape recoverability is always a question, because most of the time the cartridges of the tapes are not recoverable, because of so many factors which are beyond the control of the organization or the people, because those depends upon the heat, the humidity, the dust, which are all climatic conditions. Then how the handling of the cartridges. And I know of a customer where I was talking to, and they had been attacked of ransomware, and they had the offline, and they thought they have the ransomware protection because they can recover from their offline backup on tape. Now, what was surprising was they took about 1 month to recover the data. And that too, not all the data. It was about 60% of the data they could recover. Now, it defeats the purpose, and that's the reason they have gone for a different approach that we have suggested to them. But the point is that it is important, therefore, that while we have the offline medium, where are we keeping it? And how important, what are the parameters to check on that aspect, which I will probably keep it for another time or can take it up later. But another pointer, which I think all of us here were talking about, the prevention being better than cure. I think that goes as a normal human being, right? We all know that if we can take a yoga and if we can do some walking, we can do some exercise, we will keep good health and we may not need to go to hospital and so on and so forth. And since there are gentlemen from the insurance industry also, we all know how much people invest in insurance, right? I mean, I have been guilty myself in my past. When in the early time when I got the job about close to 3 decades back now, it was more on spending the money, right? Rather than keeping for what will happen if I am not there. That thought doesn't come. So the concept of, even if you look at today in India, the term insurance, the medical insurance, it's not it's only 2 to 3% coverage. I think if my data is right in terms of the people who really go and take it. So people generally tend to think कि सब सही चल रहा है, ठीक चलेगा. But even if you have all those best of the preventions, still things can go wrong, unfortunately. And it's all about, if it goes wrong, then what happens to the guys who are left behind? Then how do we take up from there and start getting back to the road immediately? So this is where the recovery part becomes so important. While I'm not at all trying to lower the prevention part, which is the critical part, we all have to do our prevention mechanism at personal level and also at the organization level. But I think recovery still is the most critical element that has to be there. And along with that recovery, what is important is that not only the medium on which the data is kept as a protected mechanism, how the data is, one, the offline part of it, how you are able to do analytics onto that, how you are able to analyze and see, because somebody mentioned about, if there's a good bad copy coming in between as a backup, then that bad copy also will be there and will not be even identified. So how can you at least go into that analytics onto that backup repository to see that that there's no bad element there, and if there is, you are able to identify it and you are able to delete it and keep that golden copy or image intact all the time. And in addition to that, I think what is the most important part, and which is what goes wrong most of the time, is the recovery process. Because the steps should be well defined and it should be there written, because then people just run helter-skelter, because then when such eventuality happens, then it is unexpected, and therefore the reactions also become unexpected. So if we have all the things well scripted in the paper about what process needs to take, when the forensics has to come place, what are the recovery process that needs to take place, what is the timeline that I have can bear it, the 24 hours or whatever, and the data that is there is the good copy, and I'm confident that it's a good copy. That's the most important.
Thanks. So let me, before I move further, let me introduce Mr. Manoj Sarangi. Thank you so much for joining. Manoj Sarangi is Senior Vice President and CISO for NSDL. So Manoj, before we actually move further in the discussion, let me, bring you up to date on what we have discussed and get your views on some very critical areas. We had a very, we have having a very interesting discussion wherein we know that so we're talking about ransomware attacks, and it's no longer a question of if but when. So while it's important for organizations to build the right prevention strategies, work on the right prevention strategies, it's equally important to ensure that they work on the post ransomware attack, how how they're able to recover the data, whether they're able to the 100% data recoverability, and data availability, confidentiality, and integrity, of that data is equally critical. So I want to understand from you how how you have built strategies around the post ransomware attack scenario into your data protection strategy.
Okay, thank you, Shipra. So ransomware attack is one of, I think, devastating attacks and which affects the organization. Like we operate on a playbook. Like all different cyber attacks or threats, we have put together playbooks. So when the attack happens, the playbook is used to respond and recover from the attack. Okay. If you talk about our recovery strategy from a ransomware attack, two things. One is detecting and preventing a ransomware while it happens. Like there are tools, technologies which are available when your data is getting encrypted. You can find it out in real time and respond then and there. Suppose you don't. Okay, how to recover data? So you need to be prepared. So there is something called immutable backups. So when you are backing up your data, you can take some technologies are available like worm, write once, read many. Like you write once, it cannot be written overwritten. So either that technology is available with many OEMs. So we use a combination of processes, technology, as well as our preparedness is based on the exercise that also we do. See, we conduct mock exercises and prepare ourselves. So there's no single strategy for the ransomware. It is you prepare through taking protective measures, test your measures by running exercises. Then you have a measure to kind of recover from ransomware attack. Like you have something which is immutable backup. You have write once and read many, that kind of mechanism. So, those are some things that you do to respond or recover from ransomware attacks.
Thank you so much. So, before I come back to the CIO and the CISO panelists, Debashish, you mentioned about, you gave an example of a customer where they, I mean, an organization, not a customer, but an organization where they were not able to recover the data despite having invested in the best of the backup and recovery technologies. And we have our panelists talking about the kind of backup and recovery strategies, tools that they already have in place. So can things still go wrong? Like you mentioned, there are a lot of aspects that go into ensuring that your data is fully recoverable and usable and available. So and once that recovery, once they realize that they are not able to recover all the data, can they still do something about it, or it has to be done in advance? They have to do preparation in advance.
So I'll give you the example of Dell, how we address it. Okay, so I think if you look at so far the discussions that we have had so far, three important things have come out of it. One, I think in the earlier discussion when Nitin, Sushil, and Kiran all agreed to the fact that one, backup or the data has to be, or data needs to be in an isolated place, offline, right? It has to be isolated from the production environment. Second, I think what Manoj just mentioned about is about the immutability of the data, right? So which is about worm capability, and which should be at par with the world standards, so that there is no way that somebody could modify, edit, delete, or do any changes onto that data. So the immutability and isolation. The third component, which is very important, because in order to have a confidence that I have a backup which can be recovered even after a cyber attack actually taking place, is the combination of not just these two eyes, but a third eye, which is the intelligence, which I was kind of alluding to earlier, which means that in that repository of that data, there should be an AI, ML based, some intelligence analytics tool running on that, which should be able to check on a continuous basis for any behavioral change, any vectors, which has impacted the data, or a bad data which has come onto that repository. And then that bad data should not be able to, compromise the remaining good data. So it should be able to be isolated within that, so-called repository itself, and then deleted from that place so that you have a gold copy all the time available. So what we and Dell Technologies we offer, and this comes from the legacy EMC solutions that we had. So we have a purpose-built backup appliance which runs with all the backup softwares in the world today, irrespective of whichever software we talk about. Now, this backup appliance was specifically designed to keep the data onto that setup. And the unique part, or which is the patented part of the technology there, is that it always keeps on checking the data integrity on that. And if there is any sense that there could be a problem with the data, it will create a good copy within that repository and keep it there. So, so this is something which is very unique that we have. And this we call data invulnerability architecture. So this is what we use it. And along with it, it has the worm or the immutability functionality built in without any additional cost, comes in with that purpose-built backup appliance. So that brings the first level of the good part that we can anyway bring. Now the question comes is, how do we make it isolated and also have the intelligence tool? Now on that part, what we recommend is that within the backup infrastructure on the primary side, you also create what we call the cyber recovery vault. Now this is like a vault that we have in our lockers at home, or in the banks, etc. Now in that vault, which will be also using the same medium, the target medium will be the same, the backup software application could be anything. Now that medium is connected to the primary medium through an air gap. That air gap ensures that it is not connected all the time, and there is a logical and physical isolation created on that. Okay. The third factor that comes with it is the software. Now this software checks on more than 100 such attack vectors. And based on that, what it does is it checks not only on the metadata of the file, it goes on to the document metadata, document information, and then the full content within the document. And it checks on all of them on the 100 plus vectors. And if there is anything that it finds which is encrypted, or any such which falls into that vectors, it will highlight and isolate, and then you can take the necessary, it will alert it so that you can take the necessary decisions on that. So this particular thing makes it a real-time scenario for a customer every day on his repository to know that if whenever the data is there, it's a good copy always. And because if it is on the purpose-built appliance based on the disk-based system, the recovery to the data is extremely fast. I mean, it's much before the 24 hours that we do it. So this is what we approach. And this is something which, by the way, let me take this opportunity to sell my solution for a minute. This particular approach, or this particular solution, is certified by Sheltered Harbor. Now, for the banking and financial institutions, you may be aware of the Sheltered Harbor, the guidelines. It's a non-profit organization in US, which was formed in 2017 to basically set the guidelines and policies for banking, financial sectors customers to set up their backup such that if a ransomware attack happens, they don't pay ransom. So they have come out with the guidelines and policies on this. And we are the only vendor in the world today which is certified and which is, ransomware certified solution from Salted Harbor certified solution. Sorry. So this is something which I thought may also be an important aspect to be consideration.
Thanks, Debasish. But like you said, all this needs to be done before the attack happens.
This needs to be done before, at the time, and when you are actually planning the infrastructure, it has to be before it. This cyber recovery world cannot come after the attack has happened, because then it has already happened. This has to come before, as a part of the IT infrastructure, as a part of the security infrastructure, in order to prevent such situation where an event happens and you are not able to recover the data. This will ensure that your data is always recoverable and you can get the data back within the 24 hours time.
So I want to wrap up this discussion by asking all the CIOs and the CISOs here, what are, let's say, the top 2 or 3 requirements that you have as a CIO or CISO for a resilient response and recovery strategy? These are the top 2 or 3 things that you think that a resilient response and recovery strategy to a ransomware attack, these are the things that it should definitely have, or rather your wish list for a resilient response and data response and recovery strategy post a ransomware attack. So Nitin, maybe you can give your wish list first.
I think Debasish touched on very good tools, okay, from Dell, okay, and I agree, okay, these are the wish list, okay, possibly, and more backed by those AI ML solution, given that, okay, the surface area, the threat vectors are huge. It's not possible to have a single solution to be in place which just works on a static rule engine, because the static rule engine can also be broken by anybody. So you have to incorporate machine learning tool which is more intelligent to proactively monitor the various logs and what is happening in the system, and then detect. So those EDR tools, those smart tools are very much important, okay, for detection place. Plus, I think while we're talking about the prevention piece and the recovery piece, in between the prevention and recovery, there's also a phase of identification and containment. So those are also very, very important, that, okay, even though you are recovering, but maybe after a day or two, you may find that, okay, again, you are compromised again. So you have to clearly identify what was the root cause, why were you attacked at the first place. So, and how do you contain those machines, those servers which were compromised by isolating them, and how do I trace it back or backward engineer, okay, why they were compromised. So those are also very important. So if you're able to quickly respond by identifying through this initial RC when the attack happens, so that even if you try to focus on recovery, but who knows, if you have not solved the root cause, they can get attacked again and again. So some solution to contain and do some intelligence around identifying the RCS around, okay, what could be the possible reason of this attack is very, very important.
Thanks. Sushil, you mentioned about the fact that now it's not just your data is not just on-prem, but also on cloud. And so we actually have, we have ransomware attacks which are playing out across the entire IT infrastructure and targeting all forms of data and across all digital estates like on-prem, multi-cloud, etc. So in such a scenario, what unique requirements does this create for a resilient response and recovery strategy? Your 2 or 3 requirements that you think would be good to have.
So first of all, we should continuously do assessment, and that assessment, internal assessment, is not for just obtaining certification. So I have seen many organizations, buy certificate. Sorry to say that, but that should not be approached, because the money which you have saved in getting that certificate, you will be paying much more money in paying for that ransomware attack when it happens. So better you do assessment honestly, take those feedbacks upfront and try, put a strategy how you can mitigate each of those minor non-conformatives or major non-conformatives or observation which has been identified during such assessment. So take, all those assessment as a peel for your data recovery. That is first strategy. Second, we have seen ransomware always doesn't happen because of your network or your system. It could happen because of your third party also. So our strategies include third party also as part of your extended organization. Don't leave them alone. So equally, when you are doing risk assessment for your organization, do risk assessment, have that rights to audit for your third party, fourth party as well. So particularly on if we are going on cloud, ensure that necessary certifications are there, necessary audit has been conducted, your applications, your third party applications, your APIs are also equally assessed and risks are mitigated. So invest there also some time in terms of doing a proper strategy against ransomware attack. And last not the least, don't pay any ransom because that encourages, that funds more hackers. So no to ransom.
Absolutely. Kiran, what is your wish list
Yes.
in terms of top 2 or 3 requirements from a technology tool when it comes to response and data recovery?
I think Nitin and Sushil has covered all the things, and I agree with Sushil. Those certificates should not have ornamental value, so we have to take it in a good spirit. Those certificates, and in a simple terms, I will say we should control weak points. That like the weak endpoints and the weak end user. Those two we have to control, and good backup we should have. Those 3 things are very important to fight with ransomware.
Manoj, your take on what would be your key wish list requirements from a good a resilient data recovery tool and strategy?
Right. So very interesting question. I wanted to answer in a slightly different manner than my co-panelists. If you look at protect, detect, respond, and recover that we are talking about, you have disproportionately high spend on protect. Like we have firewall, IDS, IPS, WAF, and all this antivirus and all this. We spend little less than that in detection, like we have SOC, SIM, and things like that. If you look at the respond and recover, those two areas are often kind of ignored, or not much focus is given in responding and recovering, because people don't encounter adverse situations every day, so they don't have to respond and recover every day. So the focus is much less in those two areas. So there has to be increased focus in responding and recovery. These two strategies should form core strategies of any organization, that just like what you told sometime back, it is not matter of if it is a matter of when. So when the situation arises, are you ready for it, for responding? So responding, what do we need? We need to find out and isolate the problem. We have to make sure that the forensic is done to find out the root cause of the problem. And then for recovery strategies, we need to have recovery strategies like backups, proper backups. And then you see, getting proper backups only is not enough, like immutable backup. So you have to have a complete restoration strategy. Like the backup has to be initiated with policies, processes, has to augment it. Like for example, I'll give a very small example. See, the backup appliance, when you have it, backup is can be initiated from backup, or restoration can be initiated by the host or the backup appliance itself. And there is a significant difference between these two, whether it is initiated by the appliance or whether it is initiated by the host, or there is a difference. If the host is compromised and it initiates a restore, there can be havoc. So the policy has to be right, and the recovery strategy should capture all these small points, not only the technology but also what happens when the situation arises, and you have to kind of resort to that recovery strategy. So these are important. And I don't promote any tools or technologies that I have in wish list, but any technology and process that need to be augmented to make sure that you have a good response and recovery strategy, That is required. That is very much required. Along with your protection and detection, you should also strengthen your response and recovery strategy. So that's my take on this topic.
Absolutely, and in fact, we actually discussed that, and Debashish actually brought about that point how the proportion in terms of the proportion on investments is more going into the prevention than into the detection, and of course, then even less into response and recovery. So thank you so much, and so Debashish, before we end, any 2 or 3 key takeaways that we have, in terms of creating a more cyber resilient response and recovery strategy that kind of ensures 100% data recoverability while maintaining confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in this panel today, what we have we have had a very wonderful discussion, and I think all the pointers that have come out from all, we are all again coming to the same concurrence we have on the same important pointers. So if I have to summarize that, it comes back to the same 3 things. It's about the isolation, the immutability, and the intelligence part of it as an overall framework on which the data has to be protected and kept, so that in the scenario or the event of such a ransomware attack happens, it needs to come back. Second, I think the important part which I mentioned earlier, and I think Manoj just reiterated that pointer, is about the process that has to be well defined. Every step of it. I mean, otherwise, when the event happens, and if we don't have the steps in place, even if you have the best of the infrastructure, it doesn't come to help if the steps are not followed. The third important aspect, I think, is the choice of, so addressing the backup can be done by many ways. At the end of the day, what is backup? It is about a software which does the automation and a target device where the data resides. Okay, so the point is, all the softwares, everything works fine. It's about the choice of the target devices, how you want to have those put into what form, like vaulting is one area. You can also do it in cloud, for example. Then there are also solutions available. For example, in the cloud today, many customers are moving towards the Microsoft 365 as an example, which is a SaaS application, right? We all use Salesforce also in our organization, which is again a SaaS. Now, if you go into their, the agreement copy, you will find that they mentioned that the data backup is the responsibility of the customer and not theirs. Now, erstwhile, when we had the exchange at office, we used to do a backup. Today, when it is in the cloud, we don't have a backup. Now, that's something where we are living in a volcano, because from a regulatory compliance, so many things that's so important. So, how we can even have a ransomware protected backup there, how that backup can be all holistically managed from the same console, because there would be so many pointers to take backup of, but at the end of the day, it has to be ease of management. It has to be ease of also delivering when such situation happens. How quickly one comes back to the business is the most critical part. So I think that's all, in a way, we all agreed upon in terms of the time to recover, in terms of the other aspects. So that's all I have to say. Nothing else.
Thank you, everyone. It was really a pleasure moderating this discussion, and very relevant points and insights that came out. From my end, I want to summarize by saying that, of course, I think Debashish also alluded to the insurance example that, this is data investing in a data recovery tool is, or a data recovery strategy is like insurance. You do, but you wish that you don't have to use it. But in the event of having to use it, it should work. You should not be left in the lurch where you have spent on the data, on the backup and the recovery tools, but at the end of the day, when you need it, you are not able to recover your entire data, or there are issues with the data that you recover. And this planning needs to be done right at the stage of your IT infrastructure planning. Whenever, as you're planning on upgrading your IT infrastructure, or you're planning on, building on your existing IT infrastructure, strengthening it, I think that is the time when this needs to be planned out, and not at a later stage when a ransomware attack has already happened. So with that, let me thank all of you.